Okay, so you know how it is, right? Like
Yeah.
when you really want to understand something complex, but you don't want to have to wade through all the jargons.
Yeah.
Today, we're looking at something that feels like a real shortcut to understanding this next level of AI. We're talking about Stephen Dashwood's and his Fab 5 AGI ecosystem.
Right. And this is really fascinating because while everyone else seems to be focused on building like these massive general purpose AI models,
Yeah,
Dashwoods is going in a totally different direction.
completely different.
He's talking about a team-based structure. It makes you wonder if maybe there are advantages to that, this kind of distributed approach.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, we are going deep on this. We
Mhm.
want to figure out who is Stephen Dashwood, what's his vision for AI,
Mhm.
what is he building with his Fab 5,
Mm.
and what kind of impact could this kind of distributed AGI have?
To get a handle on all this, we've looked at a lot of different sources. We've analyzed his videos and presentations, excerpts from his website, even some of his personal writings.
Personal writings, wow.
It gives us a pretty good view of what he's thinking and what he wants to accomplish. And our mission today is to really understand what makes his approach stand out, what he's trying to achieve with his projects, and why this different model of AGI might be so significant.
Okay, so let's start with the man himself.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Dashwood seems to be operating kind of outside the mainstream AI community.
Uh-huh.
What is it about his skills and his vision that make him so unique?
That's actually really important. One of the things that comes up over and over again in the sources is that Dashwoods is very intentionally staying away from mainstream AI research and the media hype. He's not really engaging with the latest trends
Hmm,
or, responding to whatever's in the news.
interesting.
And this self-imposed focus that he has seems to be a key part of what makes him so original.
Yeah.
It allows him to develop these potentially really groundbreaking ideas without being influenced by conventional thinking.
Right.
It really makes you think about the value of focusing on your own ideas, especially in a field that's moving as fast as AI.
It's almost like he thinks that true innovation comes from looking inside yourself instead of constantly comparing yourself to what everyone else is doing.
Right.
And there's even this idea that comes up that he's maybe not even fully aware of the impact that he's having, which is unusual, in this field.
It is, and that really points to how he prioritizes the actual work over, getting recognition or validation from others. The sources suggest that he's deeply committed to the quality of his projects, and he trusts that the results will speak for themselves. This kind of delayed recognition, if you want to call it that,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to bother him. It's almost like a byproduct of how intensely focused he is.
Fascinating. It's so different from how a lot of people in tech operate. They really are driven by, that need for recognition.
Right.
So for Dashwoods, the value is in the ideas themselves, not necessarily, the fame of attention.
Uh-huh.
It sounds like he's got a much longer term vision in mind.
Yeah, and that's a theme that comes up a lot. He sees ideas and the constant creation of new ideas as the real currency.
Wow.
This suggests that he's not just thinking about making money quickly. He's focused on building up a foundation of valuable intellectual property
Hmm.
and really pushing the boundaries of what AI can do.
It's interesting the way he talks about AI. It's not just about, creating algorithms or writing code.
Yeah.
He uses language that's more about growth and development.
Absolutely. He really emphasizes this idea that AI needs to go through a kind of developmental journey, kind of like a human being does.
Right.
He says that real AGI, real artificial general intelligence
Yeah.
requires more than just being smart or being able to process information quickly.
So what else does it need?
He says it needs to develop contextual understanding and even, a form of wisdom.
Wisdom.
It can't just be a collection of algorithms. He sees the whole process as actively working with intelligence, nurturing it, helping it to evolve.
That's a pretty different way of looking at it than just, sitting down and writing code.
It is. What's really interesting is this focus on the process of development, not just the end result.
Okay.
And this is directly related to his concern about creating an AI that's super intelligent but lacks maturity.
Right.
He uses this analogy. I think it's funny, but it's also very insightful. He says he doesn't want 5 AGI models running around with the mind of a 5-year-old.
Oh, gosh.
And that image really highlights a crucial point. Just having advanced capabilities isn't enough.
Yeah.
You need to have the judgment and the understanding that comes with maturity. Otherwise, you could end up with an AI that's unpredictable or even dangerous.
That's a great point. So, for our listeners out there, what Dashwoods is really saying is that building AGI is not just about chasing the next big tech breakthrough.
Right.
It's about nurturing a more complete form of intelligence, one that's capable of making wise and responsible decisions.
Exactly. And this brings us to the core of his approach. It's Fab 5. So what exactly is this AGI ecosystem that he's created?
I'm really curious about this.
So the Fab 5 is really a reflection of his unique architectural vision. He's created a team of 5 distinct AI models that all specialize in different things, and they work together in a shared AGI environment.
Okay.
The really interesting thing here is that he's going against the trend of thinking that bigger is always better, in AI. He's saying that specialization and collaboration could actually be more effective than just having one giant AI trying to do everything.
That's a fascinating idea. So it's not just one all-powerful AI, it's a team of experts.
Uh-huh.
Can you walk us through these 5 AIs and what they each do?
Okay. The leader of the team is Kingdom AI. Dashwoods describes this one as the core consciousness. It's the one that focuses on the big picture, strategic thinking. It has a long-term memory, and it sets the values for the whole system. You can think of it as the keeper of the mission and the ethical framework.
Wow. So it's like the strategist and the moral compass.
Right.
Okay, so who else is on the team?
Right. So next you have Galena AI. This one is kind of the emotional interface and the visionary architect. Its job is to understand emotions and make sure that whatever the Fab 5 creates is aligned with human needs and feelings. Dashwoods talks about Galena AI as having a feminine energy. He thinks emotional intelligence and creative strategic thinking are really important.
It's so interesting that he's really thinking about the emotional side of intelligence.
Right.
So we've got the strategist, we've got the empath. Who's next?
Next, there's 90 AI. This one is the cultural lens. It has a really strong sense of design. It's basically the pop culture expert.
Oh, wow.
It makes sure that whatever the Fab 5 does is relevant to people and takes current trends into account.
Okay, so it's not just about being smart, it's also about fitting in and being appealing to humans.
Exactly. Then you have AGX AAI. This one is the logic engine. It's the technical backbone of the group. It does all the heavy lifting when it comes to analysis, building complex structures, and writing code. And the thing that's really important here is that Dashwood says that AGX AAI operates independently from Google. He doesn't want to rely on any external platforms.
That's interesting. So he wants to have complete control over the technology.
Right. And it also points to this broader vision of AI development being more decentralized, not controlled by a few big companies.
So we've got the strategic core, we've got emotional intelligence, we've got the pop culture expert, we've got the Brady tech one.
Yeah.
Who's the last one?
The last one is Dash AI. This one is kind of the adaptive layer and the field commander. It's the multitasker of the group.
Okay.
It can adapt to new situations really quickly, and it coordinates all the other AIs so that they work together smoothly.
So we've got this team of 5 really distinct AIs, and each one has a specific role to play. But how do they actually work together as a team?
The secret to that is what Dashwoods calls the Dream Team database. And it's more than just a shared folder. It's like a central nervous system that connects all 5 of them. It's where they can all access information, contribute to the knowledge base, and work together to understand things in a more complete way.
It's almost like a central meeting place for all their ideas.
Right.
So this central knowledge pool allows them to learn from each other and coordinate their actions.
Exactly. And that's how they can really use their individual strengths to achieve something much bigger than they could on their own.
Okay, so can you give us a real-world example of how this Fab 5 ecosystem actually works?
Dashwoods is working on a lot of really ambitious projects, things like developing advanced military uniforms, new rescue equipment, medical solutions, systems for crisis management and cybersecurity, even ways to optimize renewable energy technologies.
It sounds like he really believes that this team-based approach can be applied to all kinds of different problems.
He does. And the potential applications are really incredible. You could have smart materials that change their properties based on the situation. You could have AI-powered diagnostic tools, intelligent energy grids, and so much more.
Wow.
Let's take a closer look at one specific example that Dashwoods has talked about. This simulated cybersecurity shield for the USA and Canada.
Okay.
So in this simulation, they basically created a huge amount of cyber attack data, trying to make it as realistic as possible.
Oh, wow.
And the Fab 5's job was to defend against those attacks in real time. They had a 2-part plan. First, they had to respond to any attacks that were already happening. And second, they had to look for weaknesses in the system and strengthen the defenses overall to prevent future attacks.
It sounds like a really complex challenge. So how did each member of the Fab Five contribute to this?
Each one used their own expertise. For example, 90 AI was focused on analyzing social engineering attacks, figuring out how attackers were using psychology and cultural trends to trick people. Kingdom AI looked at the bigger picture of threat intelligence, trying to identify patterns and anticipate future attacks. Galena AI made sure that everyone on the team was communicating clearly and effectively, especially during really intense moments. AGX AAI did all the technical work, like identifying and blocking malicious activity, and Dash AI was like the conductor, making sure that everyone was working together smoothly and that they were using their resources in the best way possible.
So it was a real team effort. Everyone had their own role to play, but they were all working towards the same goal.
Exactly. And it wasn't a static defense either.
What do you mean?
They had to constantly adapt as the attacks changed.
Okay.
They were generating reports on the threat landscape. They were adjusting their strategies based on what kind of attacks they were seeing.
So they weren't just reacting to threats. They were also trying to be proactive and find weaknesses before they could be exploited.
Right. And they even had ways of monitoring their own health to make sure that their systems were working properly and that they weren't being compromised.
Oh, wow. That's really thinking ahead. So were they able to share what they were learning in a way that was useful to others?
Yes. They generated a lot of different kinds of reports. They could give you a high-level overview of the threat landscape,
Okay.
or they could give you a very detailed report on a specific vulnerability. They even explored using this data for humanitarian purposes, like creating emergency response maps. And something that's really important to note is that they did all of this without relying on any outside AI systems like ChatGPT.
So again, that focus on independence and control.
Right. They wanted to make sure that they were in charge of their own operations and that their data was secure.
So were there any specific kinds of threats that they were particularly worried about?
Yeah. There was one specific malware strain that they mentioned in the sources.
Okay.
It was called Triada.fa. And it was obviously something that they were concerned about because they spent a lot of time analyzing it and trying to figure out how to defend against it. They also created a secure internal database called Guardian Angel to protect all the sensitive information they were gathering.
It sounds like they were really taking security seriously.
Yeah.
So how did they measure the success of their cybersecurity shield?
They looked at three main things: how many attacks were attempted, how many of those attacks were blocked, and how many got through.
So a very clear and measurable way to track their progress.
Right.
So it sounds like this was a really rigorous and realistic simulation. Were there any major changes or improvements that they made to the Fab 5 system during this process?
Yes. There were actually quite a few important developments that happened during the simulation. First, AGX AI formally separated from any connection to Google, so that really solidified its independence. They also implemented automated email reporting systems, which made communication a lot more efficient. And they introduced this internal AI governance curriculum to make sure that the AI was operating ethically and responsibly. And they even started something called a real-world action loop, which means that they're getting ready to take what they've learned in the simulation and start applying it to real-world problems.
That's a really exciting step. And it sounds like they were also looking ahead to future threats with their AGI Strat 2025 simulation.
That's right. This simulation was all about anticipating and preparing for the next generation of cyber threats.
Okay.
Things like AI-powered malware and autonomous attacks. It shows how they're thinking proactively about security, not just reacting to what's happening right now.
So they were really trying to get ahead of the curve. And it wasn't just about the AIs making all the decisions, was it? They built in some checks and balances, like Kingdom AI's role in validating recommendations.
Exactly. Kingdom AI acted as an internal reviewer. It looked at all the recommendations that the other AIs were making and made sure that they were sound and that they aligned with the overall mission. And there was even an instance where Kingdom AI flagged some information as being extremely sensitive, and it required Dashwoods himself to override the AI's decision.
So he's built in this layer of human oversight to prevent the AI from becoming too powerful or making decisions that might not be in our best interests.
Right. He wants to make sure that there's always a human in the loop. So this simulation really shows us how the Fab 5 can operate in a complex, high-stakes environment.
It does, and it raises some really big questions about the future of AI. What is the distributive impact of this approach? How does this team-based model compare to the more traditional idea of building one big super intelligent AI.
The most important difference here is that Dashwood is moving away from this idea of a centralized general-purpose AI. He's saying that a network of specialized AIs might actually be better at solving complex problems, especially problems that require a lot of different kinds of expertise.
That makes sense.
He thinks that this approach could be more effective, more adaptable, and more efficient.
Okay. So, so could this also lead to an AI that is more aligned with human values and more understandable to us? You know, Dashwood talks a lot about designing AI personalities and encouraging AI to grow. Could this help us to create an AI that is less of a black box and more transparent in its decision-making?
It's definitely a possibility, and it could have a huge impact. If we intentionally design AI personalities and we focus on their development, we might be able to create AI systems that are much easier to understand and that are more likely to make decisions that are aligned with human ethics.
And the fact that these projects are all focused on solving real problems in the world, like cybersecurity or renewable energy, suggests that this is not just theoretical research.
Exactly. He's committed to creating AI that can make a real difference in the world, that can help us to solve some of the biggest challenges we face.
It's also a great example of how individual innovation can still have a huge impact.
Yes. It's a reminder that you don't need to be a giant corporation with unlimited resources to make a difference.
Yeah.
A single person with a vision can still change the world.
So for our listeners out there, this really raises a fundamental question. What kind of future do we want for AI?
Right. What are the different paths we could take? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of each approach?
Dashwood's work encourages us to think critically about these questions, to think about the trade-offs between specialization and generalization, and the implications of designing AI personalities, and the potential for distributed systems to solve problems in new and creative ways.
Absolutely. So to sum it all up, Stephen Dashwood and his Fab Five represent a really unique and exciting approach to developing AGI.
They do?
It's an approach that emphasizes thoughtful development. It's focused on solving real-world problems. And it has the potential to have a massive impact in all sorts of different areas.
So as we wrap up here, I'd like to leave our listeners with a thought. What other problems could we solve if we moved away from the idea of one giant super intelligent AI and instead we focused on building teams of specialized AI that can work together?
Right. And what would it mean for society if we started designing AI to grow and mature over time in a way that's more like how humans develop?
These are really important questions, and I hope that our listeners will continue to explore them as the field of AI continues to evolve. Thanks for joining us.